Hello, everybody. Today, the Three Blind Mice are tackling a classic, the GTO. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't go away. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I'm Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And yes, indeed, today, the Three Blind Mice Invitational is going to tackle the iconic GTO. I have a big plan in store, and I'm going to just tell you right up front. As I'm recording this, I know how this is going to turn out. But before I started the project, I vowed to myself that no matter what, I was going to show you this video. I had one car, and I knew what I was going to be trying was going to be pretty big, and so I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make this work or not. So I'm just telling you, you're going to see what really happens, the way it goes, and going into it, I had no idea how it was going to come out. I do know it's going to be a lot of fun, so let's get right to it. All right, so this month for the Three Blind Mice build, we're going to be doing the iconic GTO. And I have an idea. Oh yeah, I'm going to make a funny car out of my GTO. So the plan is to try and marry these two things together. The bodies are about the exact same length. They're about the exact same width. They really should work out well. The only problem I'm gonna see here is that the wheel track is right, but the wheel base is off, and that's because more often than not on funny cars they would scooch the front wheels as far forward on the car as they could, which is the case in this mongoose that I'm going to sacrifice. So I'm going to either have to cut the body of the GTO apart to move the wheels, or we're going to have to cut the base. But either way, we got to get it apart. So let's go ahead and drill out these posts, get this car apart while I kind of make a plan. And now, I mentioned it at the beginning that I'm going into this with an idea of what I want to do, but without an idea of whether I can actually do it or not. So you're going to see whatever happens here. Now, as I'm doing this voiceover, I already know what's going to happen. But I'm talking in the tense that you're actually watching right now. At this point, I have no idea how this is going to go. I have some plans. I know I need to move the front wheels. I know I want to use the entire base of the mongoose that I have here. And so I know all of that stuff, but the question is going to be whether or not I can pull this off. Because for me, honestly, I'm going to be square with you. I'm feeling like this is a pretty ambitious little project. But, okay, so I've got the GTO apart. Crappy plastic base, be glad to get rid of it. Glass, which I'm going to have to keep. Interior is gone. And I'm going to take the body, and into the citrus strip it will go. The warm liquid goo phase is commencing. You know, that is just oddly satisfying. It's almost as satisfying as watching the paint bubble up when you brush it on. Just something about watching the car get swallowed up in that lava-like goo. All right, so we'll put that aside, and we'll turn our attention to this mongoose. And the first thing I got to do is get rid of this body. So out comes the rotary tool and lots of cutoff discs and all sorts of stuff. And my plan right now is to save the hinge. So my plan is to cut the body away from the hinge. So I'm going to start just by making the easiest cuts I can right through the rear quarters and into the rear window. I'll do that on both sides to get rid of the lion's share of the body, and that ought to make it a little bit easier for me to work. But then I'm going to actually just square cut around the hinge part of the body and leave the entire hinge part in place. Now, to those of you who think that cutting these things apart is a piece of cake, guess again. They get really, really hot. They're small, and some of the cuts you're trying to make, you're trying to avoid cutting into parts that you want to keep, and it's nowhere near as easy as it might look. But anyhow, I got the bulk of the body off. So you see how the whole rear end is almost like a hinge. I'm going to cut off the back along the bumper, and I'm going to cut off both sides, and that should leave me with the hinge and just a small portion of the trunk, which I will then grind down to fit as need be. Okay, so I finally got everything cut apart, and I'm left with exactly what I wanted, which was the little hinge mechanism. I've got the front of the body and the two quarters, and then I've got the rear bumper, and I'm just horsing around, kind of putting it back together somewhat. But yeah, I've freed the base, and I've got the hinge in place still, and so I'm really happy with the way that came out. One thing that I do need to save from this deconstructed body is the rear bumper, because I got to use it to make my drag chutes. So I'll keep that and throw the rest out. Okay, so the body's been sitting in the citrus strip for, I want to say about 6 hours, so we can go ahead and pull it out. Just fish down in there, hook it, and grab it, and then I'll kind of let most of the citrus strip just kind of ooze back off the body back into the jar to conserve as much of it as possible. And I can already see that it has done a pretty good job. All the paint looks like it's just being held on by the suction power of the ooze. So I think we've got a good strip here. We'll just drip some of this off, and then we'll hit it up with the toothbrush and see what we have. And if we like it, then we'll head to the sink and wash it and brush it off. Okay, so I'm just going to use my toothbrush and make sure that all the paint is easy coming off, and it is. So I'm just kind of slurming the lion's share of it off, and then I can go ahead and head to the sink. But yeah, so far, this is my second car through the citrus strip, and I don't know if it takes any longer or not, because I usually drop mine in the jar and leave it there for a while anyhow. So, so far I'm very happy with the citrus strip. Okay, so while I go ahead and give the wheel well situation a think, I know that I need to get rid of the back post, because my idea is to glue the trunk to the hinge part of the base using some epoxy. So I'm going to have to get rid of that and have that all nice and flat. And the front post, I just want to trim it down a lot, and it's going to be used as the standoff to hold the front end of the body at the right height when the body is down. So I've trimmed those, and I can do a quick little test fit and see how everything looks. And at this point, I'm really, really encouraged because it looks like it's going to work out. What I'm going to do for the front wheel wells is I'm just going to actually grind the fronts out until they're as far forward as they need to be and in the shape that they need to be. Rather than fill the entire wheel well with a putty and try and remake the entire wheel well, I'm actually just going to remake the very back edge of the wheel well. So I've moved the front forward by grinding away material. And then for the backs, I'm going to put a little backer on the inside of the body, and then I'll use a little Milliput, epoxy paste or epoxy putty, and I'll do a little bit of a buildup, sort of like a dentist might do on a tooth, and then I'll grind it down into the final tooth shape. So right now, all I'm trying to do is just get the front almost all the way to the front bumper, and round it out to match the original contour of the car. It's really funny because I don't think I've ever used my rotary tool this much on one single project. But okay, so I got the fronts done, and I saw some other guy using pieces of a tin can as a support material. And so I've cut out little chunks of a tin can, and I'm gluing them using a little thick super glue inside the body at the back of the wheel wells. And those will hopefully act as a little bit of a support material for the milliput. So I've got one on each side, trying to keep them relatively to the size of the body. Less work later on to deal with, but I've got them glued on. I'm just trimming them down, and then I can go ahead and put the milliput on. I'd like to apologize for some of the poor camera work here. It's tough getting used to all the new camera positions. I actually have another camera on order. Somebody said they don't like this side shot, so I think I'm going to keep it, but I'm also going to add in another first-person point of view camera. So I've got a new stand and camera coming, and once that is here and installed, it'll offer me up even more shots, and hopefully we won't have these out of frame things. But anyhow, so I've got the backing material glued in. It's nice and dry, and I'm taking the milliput, mixing up the two parts equally. And I highly recommend gloves, because this stuff gets really, really sticky. After all, it is epoxy. You can make it a little bit more manageable by wetting your fingers, but I just wear gloves, and I'm mixing this up as thoroughly as I need to. Then I'll build little flat pieces that I will kind of mold into the body and over the support material, and I'll actually put some in the back on the inside of the car to give it a little bit more strength, and hope it all works out. So we'll just have to see how this is going to go. One of the nice things about working with the milliput is that after it's pretty much dry, not completely, it's still pliable enough that you can carve away a lot of the excess just using a sharp X-Acto knife. And after this is dry, that's exactly what I will do. And then I will turn to my old friend, the rotary tool, for even more work on this car, as I then try to form the support material and the milliput into the back part of the wheel well opening. I'm still very nervous about this. It's not as thick as I'd like it to be, or as supported as I'd like it to be. But we'll see what happens. I have high hopes. So far, so good. We'll just have to forge ahead and see where it takes us. Okay, so with the milliput dry, I can turn back to my rotary tool. I've already carved away a lot of it using my razor knife, and now I'm just thinning down the inside using a sanding drum on my rotary tool, and just trying to make it not so bulky back there, but still leave enough to add a little extra support. And you can see I'm already starting to work on shaping the wheel opening, trying to make sure that back on the rocker panels that were nice and level there, and then I get a good contour to this wheel opening. So now I'm starting to fine-tune things. I'm using the X-Acto knife to soften some of the edges. I'm using some files, and it's really actually starting to take shape. And barring me doing something stupid and knocking these things off of here, I think it's going to come out all right. And in my head, what I'm seeing is after I throw on some primer and some paint and some filler and some clear coat, I think it should actually be pretty solid and not be an issue. So I really think I've got it now. Okay, so for this car, after putting on some white Tamiya fine primer, I'm actually going to use Grabber Orange by Createx. It's one of their Candy 2.0 paints, and I wanted to get that really bright saturated color that Candy 2.0 paints bring, and so it was the clear choice for this project. And I'm going to put it down the same way I always do, beginning with a tack coat and then some medium coats, and I will build the medium coats over and over and over again until I really get the color that I'm looking for. And once I'm just about there, then I will go ahead and start putting down some nice wet coats. Yeah, this Candy 2.0 by Createx it reminds me a little bit of Spectraflame, but different colors and more saturation. It's really deep, vivid colors, and you can go anywhere from a very light color to a very dark color just by your layers. Really versatile, and I like it a lot. Alright, so once the paint is dry, I'm going to turn to my decal sheet. Again, these are some decals I made myself. I'm going to be talking a lot about that coming up very soon. You know, try and help you guys out figuring out how to make your own decals, and then let you choosing what path works best for you. But I've got an entire sheet of racing stickers and the logos I want to use. And so I'm just going to cut all these pieces out and apply them the way I do with all my other decals. Just really simply a little bit of water, slide them onto the body, let them dry, and where need be, use a little bit of setting compound. So after the decals are done and thoroughly dry, I'll go ahead and throw a nice coat of urethane clear coat on the car and set that aside to dry. And while it's dry, I can turn my attention to making some drag chutes. So here I'm going to be using a product called Mold Star by Smooth On. And this is a silicone mold making material. It's a two-part material. Very simple to use, equal parts of part A, equal parts of part B, mix it thoroughly, and you can make your molds. So I'm going to be giving this a first ever shot. I've never molded anything, I've never cast anything. So here you can see on the instructions two of the most important things you need to know about your casting materials. And we can look up on this little chart. Here's our product. And you want to know the pot life and the cure time. The pot life is how long you have to get this poured to wherever it's got to go after you mix it. The cure time is how long does this thing have to sit unattended to fully cure and be hard enough to use as a mold. So now that I have all the information I need, I can take my 2 parts of Mold Star, mix them equally in 2 separate mixing cups. I'll measure them out. Then I'll pour them into 1 bigger mixing cup and stir them together really, really thoroughly. Here what I've done is I've taken the back of the funny car and I've glued it to this big popsicle stick. And that's how I'm going to set it into the mold. So this little cup will be filled with the silicone, and then the bumper will be sitting on top of it. And at the end of the day, I should come out with a great mold of the twin drag chutes on the back of this car. Okay, so I don't need a lot of the silicone for making the mold. So I'm just going to measure out equal amounts of part A and part B in 2 separate cups to make sure that I get the measurements right. And then I'll dump those 2 into a bigger cup so that I have ample room for a thorough mixing. I have to be honest about this. I'm really excited about this new skill. This is not something I've ever done before. You're seeing it here first. I hope it all comes out right, but I'm excited about it, and it so far seems like it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to cast new pieces. I'll be able to cast wheels from other wheels. I'll be able to make castings from things I 3D print. I'll be able to make replicas of windshields, and I actually have a project in mind in which I'm going to go into a lot of detail on casting, so be looking for that video soon. But yeah, I'm kind of excited about this and hope that it all works out right. Okay, so keeping in mind my pot life, I'm mixing, making sure that this is completely and thoroughly mixed. We don't want some sticky, gummy, uncured spots because we didn't mix it up thoroughly. But we do have to remember the pot life. I've got to get this stuff mixed and poured, you know, in the right amount of time. So now I've got the cup that's going to serve as the container for the mold. I've laid my popsicle stick with the bumper over there, and I'm going to start pouring in the mold star. Okay, so I'm going to pour this right to the very top of the cup to make sure that the entire drag, chute, and bumper assembly is covered by the silicone. And then I will set this aside to dry. It's got a cure time of 4 hours, so I'm just going to leave it alone for the next 4 hours and hope that I did everything right. If not, hey, we'll try it again. See you in 4 hours. Okay, so I didn't want to stop working, and it hasn't been 4 hours, so I figured I can do something else. And so I've started doing detail painting on the underside of the funny car. I painted in the front of the blower and the exhaust pipes and some of the framework. And now what I'm doing is I'm using Tamiya's panel lining fluid, and I'm going around and I'm detailing things like the gaps between the exhaust pipes and some of the highlights around the blower and stuff like that, and just trying to give the entire underside a more realistic look. And you know, I don't know if you can see around the exhaust pipes the difference between the left ones and the right one, but it really makes a pretty big difference and adds a level of authenticity, you know, realism underneath the hood. So I highly recommend this stuff. I use it all the time on model building, and I've started to use it more and more in my diecast builds. I'm often asked about bloopers, and so I decided to keep this next bit in the video. Stupid clumsy me. Oh, there it goes. What a mess. This is everywhere, and I've got my mold there. It's still wet, so I can't jostle that, and only me. Feel free to laugh at my clumsy ass all you want. That's why I left it here, so you could get a chuckle at my misfortune. Bottom line is, it still worked great on the car, and it's going to add a lot of detail, so I'm glad I did it. I'm just not glad that I knocked it over. And I guess it's time to order a new bottle of it too. With all the mess cleaned up, I can give you a nice close-up look at the detail of the car and how everything is popping now, and it really just adds so much. It's a very good product. I love the stuff. So what I've done here is I've taken a little piece of Tamiya masking tape and I've put it on the windshield down at the bottom edge, and I'm going to cut out a notch where the blower will be able to get the air. There's usually a notch there either in the hood or the glass or both, and in this case I'm going to notch out the glass just so that the blower can breathe as much air as it wants as it tears ass down the racetrack. So using the tape as a guide, I'm just very carefully scoring it with my razor knife, and then I'll just continue to score deeper and deeper and deeper until I can remove the piece, and then I'll file it down nice and smooth and level, and that should be about all I need to do there. Okay, so now it's been 4 hours, and yep, this thing feels solid. I'm poking at it with my knife. It's looking pretty good. All I'm going to do is just kind of trim some of the overflow on the popsicle stick to make sure that that comes free, because what I want to do now is I just want to pull the popsicle stick and the back end of the car out of the mold, and hopefully I have a beautiful impression that will make a great casting. So we'll just score this and we'll start to pry it away and see what we got. Okay, so after a little gentle prodding, because we don't want to ruin our mold, it finally comes away, and lo and behold, it looks like I've got a really good impression. Now, I did not put this in a pressure pot to draw bubbles out, so you can see there's some bubbles, but it looks like they still have a good film over them, and all I want is the drag chute, so I think I'm okay here. But for bigger castings and other castings, a pressure pot might be definitely the way to go. So I'm going to put that aside and let that dry for a little bit before we try casting the resin, just to make sure that it's completely solid and ready to go. And so until then, I'm going to occupy my time by painting in the back bumper and around the headlight bezels. So all I've done is I've taken a little Tamiya tape and masked off the rear bumper, and I'm going to use some Tamiya chrome silver, and I'm just going to brush paint the bumper in, and it should come out fine. I'm thinning it down enough so that it will flow out, and I shouldn't get any brush marks. And then I'll use the same paint to detail out the front of the car as well. Once I'm done painting the silver, I'll go ahead and peel away the masking tape and set that aside to dry, and I can turn my attention back to another smooth-on product, which is called Smooth Cast. I'm using Smooth Cast 65D, which is a resin, and again, this is a 1-to-1 mixture, so it's easy to mix, and I need a very small amount of this. So I will mix it up and pour it into the mold and let it dry. Now, this stuff has a very short pot life and an even shorter drying time. It cures in under 5 minutes. So once you mix this together, you've got to hustle, okay? You've got to be kind of ready. But yeah, so I take my instructions out. I verify the pot life and the cure time. And I know it's a 1 part A, 1 part B, so I can go ahead and get the mixing, and let's get this piece cast and see how it comes out. Okay, so 1 part A, 1 part B, mix, 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 and once it's mixed, we will then go ahead and fill up our little mold here. And man, I really hope this works. I've got my heart set on these drag chutes. You know, I have another option. I can always cut the metal ones off the base. But if this works, I'll have a mold that'll make drag chutes all I ever want. just put it aside and keep it. And if I ever need a drag chute, I can mix up a little of this resin and pour it in. So I've got it all mixed, and I don't need much, just to fill the little pocket where the drag chutes are. I'm gonna tap it to try and bring up any bubbles, and I'll set that aside for about 5 minutes. This stuff will dry white. So right now it's really clear. That's not how it's going to dry. It's going to dry white. And here you can see it's gone white. It's dry and it's white and it's hard. So I'm just going to take a little toothpick and poke in the cup to make sure that it's hard. Because if it's hard there, it should be hard in the mold. And yep, it is solidified beautifully. I'm actually surprised how rigid that is. So now I feel like I can safely poke the part in the mold, and that's feeling good. That sounded so dirty. Just get your minds out of the gutter there. All right, so I've got the mold out of its little cup, and I'm just bending it a little bit so I can pry the drag chutes out. Out they come, and wow, I have drag chutes. I have a really nice little copy of the drag chutes. I'm very happy with this. Mold is clean. I can put it away, save it for another day, and I'll just let this dry a little bit more, and then we can go ahead and trim away the excess, paint this, and put it on the car. So after trimming, the drag chutes fit just perfectly on the back of the car, and so we can actually call this project done and take a look and see what we got here. All right, there you have it, my GTO funny car. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you what, going in, like I said, I didn't really know if I was going to be able to do this or not. And man, it exceeded my biggest aspirations. It looks amazing. I'm so happy with the way everything worked out. I couldn't be any happier with it. And hopefully this month it's really going to give some of these other guys a run for their money, because let me tell you something. The Three Blind Mice Invitational is bringing out the best in everybody. So hopefully this will be able to hold up against all of these other guys. All right, I really hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, click the little bell, and you'll be notified anytime I release a new video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I really do love to talk with you guys and try and answer as many of the comments as I can. Okay, this is Paul. I'm going to get out of here. I hope you have an amazing, successful day in which you are able to overcome the biggest obstacles and all the doubts you might have. Until next time, be good.